What's going on, Soul Nation? Ginger Prime here. We're talking about Anthem's Community Cortex for Week 4 for the season of Icetide as we wrap up 2019 and head into 2020. We've got a mere 34 days left, so get your crystal farming on so that you can get the gear and legendaries that you've been chasing probably all of 2019. So in this Community Cortex, we're going to talk about everything that is included, and we have a special discussion reflecting on Anthem in the wake of a single player story and a multiplayer game. And so we're going to dive right in. Greetings once again, freelancers. As the holidays in Icetide are still going strong, we'll keep things brief and to the point so that you can get back to your festivities and gaming. Most of us here at BioWare and EA are on holiday as well, and we're just as eager to do the same. Like last week, we won't be providing scores on the top Stronghold contenders until after the holidays, so please bear with us until we are back up and running. Some of us are still digesting too much rabbit meat turkey. Though we're out of the studio, do know that we're keeping a weathered eye on things to make sure no problems arise, so let us know if anything crops up. Lore stories are also on hold until after the break, so stay tuned for new ones in the new year. Now, as far as Week 4, we're returning to the Heart of Rage with the weekly Stronghold, and this includes the Heart of Ice daily and weekly challenges. As a part of the seasonal store refresh, we've got our Piercing Armor Pack, we've got our Graphics Green Glinston, and then you have your Legendary Colossus Interceptor, Ranger Storm, Legendary Weapon Component, and just your Legendary. These are all going to be represented by 5,000 with the exception of the Armor Pack, which is 4,000, and the graphic, which is 3,200 crystals. As a part of the featured store refresh, we've got Wrap Gallant Gyrant, Wrap Snowbound, Metal Gold Leaf, Fabric Canvas Zigzag, Decal Seasons Tidings, and the graphic Glacier's Gleam here on the featured store. So you can see that lots to do, lots to grind for. It is my personal advice is that as you do your challenges, you continue to rack up coin. Rack up as much coin as absolutely possible because I don't believe the game has yet earned the shards in which that you can purchase. Hopefully in the future with 2.0 we'll see more updates that will actually warrant some of that discussion as a part of a microtransaction discussion in a future video. So be sure to subscribe if you like those kind of conversations. Now, like we said, the season of Icetide is wrapping up here in a mere 34 days, so be sure to keep track of your progress as a part of your season, as well as your path of glory with your dailies, with your weeklies, especially your weeklies, and your monthly challenges. You can always keep track of those and track your progress. This is going to be what's going to ultimately feed you the most items as possible. You can kind of see here completed the daily Frost Warning, which is incredible. 2,000 minor crystals, 1 guardian token, 400 coin. You don't want to pass this up. Every time you get that, you want to be able to knock that out. And then any other dailies and weeklies. Again, continue to try and target and focus on any of these guardian tokens because these are going to drop you kind of guaranteed legendaries as a part of the other currencies that are found within the game in terms of harvesting and more. So just keep that in mind. Keep focusing on your weeklies, and let's dive into our discussion. So over on Reddit just the other day, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, but Gedidson here posted a wonderful written article talking about reflecting on Anthem in the wake of the Game of the Year discussions, as obviously we wrap up 2019 and head into 2020. We actually got into a really nice little conversation about the game itself as well, which was really kind of nice to see. So I thought this would be something really nice for this video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below as well. So they do a warning, fairly lengthy thoughts about Anthem at the end, at year's end. Watching some of the year's media coverage got me reflecting on Anthem and how, before it launched, I was certain that it was going to be my personal game of the year. And in the aftermath, it's nowhere near that. And I've been thinking about what went wrong for me. It truly feels that they've started making a narrative-driven single-player game and wrote all the narrative and most of the characters. And then someone said, okay, now make it a live service looter. Then they had to kind of gut it out and find a way to make the main story have multiple branches and endings so that they don't break the share world aspect, but left all the lengthy side single player style dialogue with choices in. That's fine if you're playing by yourself and you have the time to take it all in, but that's not how the game was marketed, and it was sold as a looter shooter and to be played with friends. lengthy cutscenes between and during every mission are completely at odds with the pacing of a co-op looter shooter. If Anthem had been a single-player game with typical BioWare branching narrative and more defining ending, or more definitive ending, then more variety of mission content that could have been received much better, I think. The gameplay feels good, and it feels like Mass Effect on steroids. The pieces were there, they just needed more of them. Somewhere along the line, we were convinced that we wanted a lengthy dialogue, and everything in an MMO to be completable solo. The side effect of this has been completely uninspiring single-player content in games that were originally meant to be played in a group. Ever try to play ESO in a group with 4 and anything other than instance dungeons while in voice chat? It's a disaster. There's dialogue everywhere, and most of it's decently written and interestingly enough, but it is impossible to take it when you've got 3 other people in voice chat all talking over each other, and everyone's wondering what mission that they're even supposed to be doing, and when there's always at least one person who skips all the dialogue and then asks 400 questions because they don't understand what's happening. The game was simply not designed to be played like this, and even if it fails into an MMO category, hitting the level cap in most MMOs is now mostly designed as a solid area experience, and those games have suffered for it. The game design philosophy is now bled into the looter shooter space, and it is one giant bumbling cluster F that we got with Anthem. The game meant to be played with your friends, with long cutscenes, fairly interesting characters, and a decent enough storyline, all completely wasted because no one wants to be the one person holding up the group, so everyone's just rushing through the stuff in town, and they didn't take anything optional, which has kind of ruined the flow of the game overall because of the shared world aspect, even if you've stopped to take it all of the side conversations when we're supposed to, and instead of it all, at the end of the game, most of them were completely non-consequential. The pieces were all there to make a compelling single-player experience. The foundation for the gameplay loop was all there to make a compelling looter-shooter experience. They mashed the two together, and it just didn't fly. In the end result, Anthem didn't flesh out either half enough. Both the looter-shooter and the story aspects were ultimately shallow on Anthem, and there was literally nothing to do in the game once they beat the single-player portion of it. A few dungeons will take in half an hour free roam patrol, basically 2 hours worth of content, and you could do that all of eternity to gear up. And then none of them a significant way to put your build to the test. The content you were gearing up for was literally the content you were using to gear up, but with bigger and, as we soon learned, artificial numbers, the static level designs, so that they were always exactly the same. This ended up being way longer than I originally intended, but someone who likes the narrative-driven single-player games like BioWare is known for, as well as the looter-shooter games like Diablo and Borderlands. I should have been Anthem's target demographic, and it's appealed to all of my senses. And then they managed to satisfy none of them in the end. And it had good writing for the most part, but the dialogue choices were completely non-consequential, and it all took place in a tiny little town. It had, in my opinion, really fun combat, but nowhere to actually put it to the test. Endgame raids. It had the foundation for the looter style end loop, but there was really nothing good. There was really no good loot. The drop rates were pretty frustrating and low for the variety of things to do once you've reached that endgame grind. In the end, it failed for both me, and if you play the game in the mindset that you're playing a 20 to 30 hour single player RPG, I'd have considered it half decent game, 7 out of 10, had it been run well. Taking in the numerous technical problems, the game also suffered and would have dropped that score significantly through Anthem in a state that felt like an early access title. To be fair, a lot of these live service games do, but the Division 2 launched pretty successfully just after Anthem, and it definitely amplified the negative air surrounding Anthem's endgame problems. Has anyone else been thinking exactly what went wrong with Anthem for you personally? For the other people like me that were as hyped as hell for Anthem and then quit after a couple months, never looking back, is there anything BioWare can do that can get you to reinstall at this point? I know that we've beaten the game to death here, but I, like most people like me, would still rather see Anthem get the overhaul it desperately needs to succeed rather than just fade away to time. And so there's a lot in here that is really interesting for me just to kind of unpack, like the narrative-driven and the multiplayer-driven, because there is this sense of, right, we see this in other games, like skip the cutscene, let's go, let's go, let's go. I personally really enjoyed this story of Anthem. I think the story of the world helps set the context of what's going on. Honestly, I think the biggest weakness in design, personally, in my opinion, is the single-player Fort Tarsis first-person experience. It would have been really interesting to see other players running around. And I mean that because you can take people into an instance, you can do the cutscene thing, you can feed them narrative as you're playing, obviously through the ciphers and things like that. Like, you can feed exposition through these quests. And I think that having a story and a single player experience through that story is just fine. But the point in which that we've seen a huge shift to kind of, there's like a single player game and then a multiplayer end game, it seems like it's a compromise, and it's kind of the best of both worlds, because if you want a single player experience, go play a single player game. If you want a multiplayer experience, play a multiplayer game. But we do, as players, want them to blend these things together in a cohesive way, and we want other people that we're playing with to care about it. But if you're trying to watch a cutscene in voice, which I remember playing through this game, I'd have to mute voice to enjoy the cutscene and to get the context of what's going on, and then come back in. So there was always these pop-ins and pop-outs. It felt, for me, the pacing felt off. It felt like, okay, run mission, okay, we got all these cutscenes, okay, now are we all ready to go do a mission, and then you gotta wait for somebody. It felt like there was just a lot of that. And that ties back into what you've probably heard me say, is that when you look at free play, when you look at the world, like right now it's free play is 4 people max. I don't think originally that was probably what they wanted. I think they wanted that free play area to be the main game, to be kind of where everything's going on, to have more people running around that you could run into in real time. And with all that happening, then you would sit here and say, okay, like if your friend's off waiting in a cutscene, like you're running events, you're doing content, rather than sitting at a waiting screen for them to ready up. And I think that's kind of essentially where, personally for me, if I was going to say, like, one thing that they can do is put us in the game, get us playing it, keep us flying around, get that. If you go look at the free play, there feels like there's so much going on. And then when you look at the original 2017 E3 thing, it's like, yeah, you could see strongholds and different things like that popping up on the map. And I think that's what their goal was, is like, let's get people playing in the world, and people could drop in and drop out multiplayer. So, oh, you got a cutscene, okay, you can kind of go off, and everybody can keep playing, and they're not being held up by you, and you're not feeling rushed to skip the cutscene in the end. But those are just my thoughts. I thought this was a really good Reddit post. I replied, so feel free to go out, and if you are interested in engaging on the Reddit thread, I'll include a link in the description below. But I'm going to wrap this up. This is week 4 for Icetide. Thanks, everybody, for watching this video. I hope you all have a great week. Hopefully you hit that subscribe button and join just here on Juja Prime. Join the Soul Nation. But until then, Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time.